So what's left? 600 billion in value unaccounted for. It's basically robotics, right? I mean, you guys tell me, is there something I'm missing? Energy. Somebody mentioned superchargers. There's not, a whole lot left. I mean, it feels like robotics is the main sort of gig here that's left. And I did a funny analysis in my head. Usually for biotech, what we do is we move we don't expense R&D because it's an investment. So when you expense R&D, you're really kind of penalizing the company when they're trying to create the valuable assets. The R&D is you spend money on R&D to get a return. Otherwise you wouldn't spend it. So that's one way to look at it. Okay. Back to robotics. So let's say, the robot's $60,000. And, when I say the robot, I'm sure they'll have all kinds of robots and this and that, but let's dumb it down and just say they're going to sell 60,000 robots and they're going to sell 1 million of them a year. Now, Musk has said that there are going to be more robots than people. So 1 million is very conservative. And given how much utility the robots could have, I mean, you could lease a robot, for example. If you can't afford buying one outright, maybe you could lease one for $10,000 a year, and it could do all this work for you. So eventually, I do think this is what's going to happen. So 1 million is probably conservative, to be frank. But now you have 60 billion in revenue. And I don't know, let's say there's a 50% margin or something. So there'd be 30 billion in free cash flow. Put a 20x on that, you get 600. And so obviously if they do 10 million in robots, you could even lower the margins a little bit. You're talking about 5 trillion possible upside. Some of you may say this is all nonsense, none of it's going to happen, and you put 0 down. So if you take the worst case for everything on Tesla, it's got a lot of downside. It's got basically 75% downside. If you look at the best case for everything on Tesla, yeah, sure. You're then looking at I guess a 5x, something like that. So is there a so I sort of intentionally set this to equal to 0. So the current market cap is correct if the following are true. You should pay a 40 times multiple on the car business, which I think is reasonable. Robotaxi's worth 250, which again, you may disagree, but I think that's reasonable. And robotics is worth 600, which again, you can disagree, but I think it's reasonable. So between these 3 things, cars, robotaxi, and robots, it turns out that cars is just 1/3 of the picture. You're paying 2/3 of the picture, you're sort of paying for 2 startups. You're paying for a robotics startup, and you're paying for a Waymo-style robotaxi startup. Now, these are startups that have a lot of, basically, it's the richest man in the world, the most successful entrepreneur ever, 1. And then 2, on the robotaxi startup, they got a lot of cars out there. They know how to make cars, they know how to make software, so they got a big head start. And then on robots, they do AI well, but I think robots is the riskier bet, but it's also, what if there are 100 million robots? And they're $20,000 each, and the world is just androids, tons of robots walking around helping us with our daily activities. There's a company called Figure that just raised at 50 billion. So I think at the very least you have to value Tesla maybe at the very least 100 billion. Give it some credit for the robots, because a Figure who's never sold a robot is valued at 50 billion. Yeah, look, if you think Tesla's overvalued, you probably aren't. You probably don't look at investing the way I do, at least, and I think that's, for obvious reasons, I think that's wrong, because if you think all future opportunities aren't worth anything until you actually see the revenue earnings, well, you're necessarily completely undervaluing all future opportunities. That's not the right way to do it. If you look at Figure, look, this is cool. This could do something. The factories and homes could use these. So at 50 billion, the people putting money in Figure are not stupid. They're taking a risk. Figure will either be worth $1 trillion, it'll be worth zero. But they're trying to do it, right? And you have to look at Tesla the same way. It's VC that's public. Now again, would you pay $600 billion for Tesla while other people are paying $50 billion for Figure? Kind of makes Figure look cheap compared to Tesla. But Tesla's got a big advantage. They got Elon fucking Musk. That's a big deal. And they have a lot of capital. Figure's got to raise capital, hand to mouth. They have had AI for a long time, AI experts within the company. And they're used to making huge amounts of scale for machines, steel machines. So, it's certainly not real yet. It'll be a while before these machines will be around your house making you coffee and folding your laundry. That's still going to be some years. But the point is, if you follow AI closely, it really wouldn't be surprising if these machines could do all that, because they can do it in the text dimension. And the bet is, will their flexibility and utility in text transfer to the real world? And the real world's quite different from text. It's in some ways a lot more complex, but in other ways it's arguably not more complex. If you think about what requires more intelligence, folding laundry or doing quantum mechanics, writing the most complex programming that you've ever seen, writing assembly code in 1 second. I would say it's harder to do the assembly code, and that's why we pay people who can do that a lot more than we pay people who fold laundry. So I think you're going to have general purpose robotics. I don't think you're going to have the old way of I think that the old way of thinking is that, yeah, these robots will do one thing really well if they're programmed to do that one thing. I don't think that's what's going to happen. That's already happened. That's the past. Once the Rubik's Cube, when OpenAI did the Rubik's Cube example, the Rubik's Cube is pretty hard. I can fold laundry better than I can do a Rubik's Cube. And it solves the Rubik's Cube in 1 second. If you guys haven't seen that, let me show you. Well, this is an MIT bot, but let's see if we can get the original OpenAI one. This was done a long time ago.
When I started Walton Goggins Goggle Glasses.
So there's been lots of progress since then. And, basically the machine has to plan and like the tattoo. Okay, it's getting the feel. It's got the feel. Yeah, so ultimately, if you tell OpenAI you are in a room, you see the box, you know your goal is to move the box from here to there, OpenAI will tell you in text, okay, I move the box. So translating that textual world into the real world, I don't think it's going to be that hard. Many people are working on it. That's why Figure is worth so much. Yeah, these have gotten better. I think the proof of concept Yeah, a human that knows how to solve a Rubik's Cube is fairly quick. But this is good too. Yeah, I mean, again, that's the bet. I'm not saying that you have to bet that it's right or that it's going to happen. I'm saying that you have to give it some probability of success. If you're certain that the probability is zero, well, you know, you have to look at both Elon and say he's an idiot, and then you have to look at the people doing Figure and saying they're an idiot, and that's a tough bet to make. At least give it a 5% chance of working or something like that. This was longer than 5 years ago, actually. So again, yeah, you can't have too much hopium. I agree with that. You don't want to turn into Kathy Wood, but you cannot completely disregard the future at all and say all these smart people working hard on this stuff, it's all for naught. That you would have said that there's no way a machine can type to you and think. Well, OpenAI is doing a lot of revenue now. The whole world's obsessed with this stuff. So you have to be open minded. And again, will we have general purpose robots this year? No, I don't think so. But you don't buy stocks for this year. You buy them for the perpetuity of the company's life. And to say that we never will have general purpose robots, I mean, that's a crazy thing to say if you ask me. Now, will we have them in the next 5 years? I'd say that's more of a 50-50. Will we have them in the next 10 years? I gotta say that's close to 100%. I mean, 90%. There are some things that it's unclear if robots can plan well and things like that. But just looking how big the leaps were in LLMs in just a handful of years, it's sort of it did happen. So yeah, there you go. I hear Sam Altman in the back. And I think it's faster now. Let's see if there's the MIT one. But again, these are general purpose robots. These are not general purpose robots. These are specifically trained to do one thing. That's not complicated. Yeah. Yeah, 1 second. Less than 1 second. So it's not hard to have a machine do that. That's why the OpenAI achievement was more impressive, because it was an actual hand. Look at that. That's 30x slowed down. Look at how fast it. Let's look at this again. How crazy is this?
Solving in 3, 2, 1.
Oh yeah.
Solving in 3, 2, 1.
Oh yeah. So the point of general purpose is that machine can react to different situations and stuff like that. And look, I think that in the next few years you might buy one of these machines and you might say, stupid robot, it doesn't realize that the dog is in its way, and maybe it runs over the dog or the dog barks at it or whatever. That's that's just something that we're going to have to deal with first generation products the same way we dealt with the first generation cars were disasters. The first generation cars were, awful. So I think, what I predicted is coming true, it looks like. It's a Minsky moment.
Water-filled.